Ladies and gentlemen, AWS Summit Tokyo 2016へようこそ。エンタープライズデーキーノートの開演です。アマゾンウェブサービスジャパン株式会社代表取締役社長長崎忠夫の登場です。Please welcome Mr. Tadao Nagasaki.
皆さんこんにちは。
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. AWS Summit 2016. Well, this time we have 3 days of duration of the extended schedule for you. Today is an enterprise day, so this is our first initial trial, I must say. But the enterprise customers, in other words, the utilization of cloud has accelerated over the years. And AWS is a cloud competence service, which we had announced. It's been already a decade now. The Tokyo region, the cluster of Tokyo region as a cluster, officially, it's been 5 years since we officially launched this cluster. Looking back 5 years ago, the environment that surrounds us, or the attitude or thinking or mindset or adaptation regarding clouds from the customer's perspective have changed and transformed over the years. More than what we had thought, with a great amount of speed, the enterprise customers are introducing cloud. Now, cloud is a prerequisite in terms of considering about establishing and opening up their system. And many of the customers in introducing the cloud, what are some of the case studies? What are the steps that how clouds are being introduced to the company? Well, I have heard this discussion over and over at times in the past. So the enterprise customers in introducing cloud in the future years to come, what are the steps that needs to be undertaken? And what are the clues and the tips that we will be able to offer? And that is how we have comprised this schedule for this summit. Innovation, meaning that we are launching a lot of different services so rapidly. In just a decade of our history, which is quite short in terms of revenue, we were able to establish a run rate of 1 trillion yen business in the world of IT technologies. In a decade, exceeding 1 trillion, I think, is the first company ever to exceed 1 trillion within a decade. So the AWS supporters, the customers and partners we are due to your patronage. Well, starting from this year, utilizing media, we are going to run an advertisement promotion. And the enterprise customers, to thank them and to gratify them, having the user as a main centerpiece of the starring role, we are launching this ad. And this year, it's 3 days. We are expecting 16,400 applicants for the session. Already, we have over 1,000 participants today. From tomorrow, the general session, we're expecting 15,000 plus customer to come to the event. Well, the enterprise customer, we wanted to offer a more leisure and offering more space in having a more luxurious session. So we decided to cut this out and curve this out so that we will be able to spend full days as being our enterprise customers with full space and also luxury of time. So today's theme is Cloud Journey. For the customers in the past, in a decade, 5-6 years in Japan, having dialogue with the customers, introducing cloud, and the step to introduce them, we have a certain different patterns. The type, the vector, regardless of the size and the verticals of the customers, regardless of that, they start very small as a trial pilot project. And there's a workload or project that is going to be expanded, and afterwards it's going to be cloud first. Or cloud first, from there onwards, everything was on-premise, and the workload is going to be migrated to the cloud overall. And ultimately, destination is the so-called cloud native, the optimization of application that is going to be established for the cloud. So AWS potential is being drawn out by the level 120%. So it's step by step. So some people leap to the third and the fourth step, but these are the common set of patterns, identical that we have seen over the years. Through the voice of the customers, what are the patterns that customers are following, and how they have gone through the customer journey or the transformation and innovation of the business, and how we have given significant impact to the management of the business is something that I would like to share with you. Well, starting from 1 p.m., we have a special guest from the United States, a huge big major company, GE. How were they able to transform themselves through the utilization of cloud? And this afternoon we have 3 breakout sessions. So the executive tracks, an infrastructure track, and business innovation tracks. So these are the 3 executive tracks. Well, cloud, many of them, it's a cost issue that trigger them to migrate to the cloud. The biggest voice that we hear is not only the price has gone down, but for the company, the transformation, or maybe to the management, it offered a lot of accelerated speed. So it has contributed to the top line of the business. That is the technology, and that I think is the biggest advantage and competitive edge that AWS will be offered to the customer. So through these sessions, we have till 6:30 this evening. We have this abundance of information that we will be able to provide to you. So I hope you do enjoy. And there are over 60 customers offering solution in exhibition room. AWS staff is also there, so please let us know if there's anything that we can do. So without further ado, we would like to start our keynote. CTO Eric Tucker, Mr. Eric Tucker will be invited. So please invite Mr. Eric Tucker with a big round of applause.
Hello and good afternoon. I'm Eric Tucker. I'm the IT Chief Technology Officer for GE's Global Research Centers, and I've come to talk to you today about a digital transformation. The General Electric Company, as you may know, is a company with a long legacy of innovation. In the 124 years since Thomas Edison and Charles Coffin combined their companies to form the General Electric Company, we have been defined by breakthroughs in innovations in superconducting. We've played a key role in the electrification of the world. We've introduced radio and television. We participated in the race to space. GE is, in fact, the last remaining member of the original Dow Jones Index. Today, GE is known as a high-tech company working to solve some of the world's toughest challenges in the energy, transportation, and healthcare sectors. But if our long history of innovation has taught us anything, it is the importance of being restless, of challenging our own assumptions. This is why, over the last 5 years, we've begun the process of remaking our company, exiting many of our capital holdings, and launching a new horizontal business known as GE Digital. If the last decade has taught us anything, it is that digital disruption has the power to shift entire industries. Much as the other 11 members of the original Dow Jones Index are no longer in existence, many companies have found themselves having to totally rethink their value to the market and sometimes their very existence in the marketplace as a result of digital disruption. In the year 2000, Blockbuster Video was a nearly $5 billion company. And at the time, they were given an opportunity to buy a fledgling startup that thought they had a different way of thinking about the media world. For $50 million, they had the opportunity to buy Netflix. 10 years later, Netflix was a powerhouse in the digital media industry, totally redefining how we interact with media. Blockbuster Video was bankrupt and was sold for $250 million. These are very real stakes in a digital and uncertain world. So at GE, we asked ourselves, how can we combine our long legacy of innovation and our long history in the industrial world with this digital future? Our answer is to become a digital industrial. So we find ourselves asking questions like, what would it mean if our factories were brilliant? What would happen if our wind turbines could talk to one another and cooperate to generate electricity? How much value could we create if we understood the performance of every single asset in the field and we could tune their performance based on real-world data? How can we help our customers make smarter decisions in increasingly complex and uncertain markets? To do all of these things, we had to change ourselves. So how did we do it? First, it's important to note that we did not turn our back on our legacy. We know that for our customers, it remains very important to them that we have deep domain knowledge, that we understand their markets, their market pressures, that they count on us to understand these transportation, energy, and healthcare industries in the same ways that they do. They expect us to be industrial strength. The performance of a power plant, when it's up, but when it's down, it affects the whole world. People rely on the quality of the capabilities that are provided by the General Electric company. But at the same time, we knew we had to increase our digital focus. We had to acquire and attract new digital talent. To that end, we are investing in a significant way in digital talent in our company, shifting our focus from strategic outsourcing and partnering with strategic integrators and systems integrators to strategic hiring in the area of digital talent. We have hired thousands, and we will hire thousands more digital natives, people that understand software development, machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics, that live as digital natives in this world that we're all creating together. At the research centers, the fastest growing areas of research are in the areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. They're cornerstones to how we think about technology in the future. In IT, we're not just doubling down on the things we knew how to do well, building data centers, building complex IT systems. We're not just thinking about how we used to do things, but we're thinking, how can we lean into the future? How can we leverage and adopt platforms, participate in robust ecosystems? How do we find those capabilities that are intended to catapult us into the digital future? Cloud computing is an incredibly important part of this transformation. Cloud computing is not just a technology transformation. It enables a cultural transformation. We are actively moving our portfolio of over 9,000 applications to the cloud, not just to save costs or improve productivity, but we know that this will allow us to shift our very best talent from our back office data centers to our frontline businesses. In each and every one of our companies, we have incredibly intelligent and capable people buried in our data centers, people that know more about how to do forecasting and demand management than some of our very best marketing people. So why wouldn't we bring that talent out of our back office and make them, give them an opportunity to be closer to revenue generation? We recognize that in the future, marketplace leaders will be defined by their ability to create and take advantage of insight, and that true innovation is going to happen at the intersection between humans and machines. We also recognize that we're living in an era of digital time. What do I mean by digital time? As we get increasingly capable of bringing massive amounts of data together, we have in our hands a remote control that allows us to rewind into the past and understand why we had failures or system faults or differences in the design in the past, to fast forward into the future and predict what might be capable and how our systems might perform. We have the ability to compress time, taking years and years of data and analyzing them overnight to understand how things interact in ways that were impossible even 5 years ago. We believe in a future where our people are constantly made smarter by sophisticated insight engines that pour through these petabytes of data to extract heretofore unknown truths. We know that robotics will free us from the dull, dangerous, and dirty tasks, and that our factories, farms, and homes will become smarter as sensor technology, control systems, and machine learning come together to help us learn, adapt, and grow. The last 2 decades have seen a technology transformation unlike anything seen in the course of human history. But at GE, we believe that we're just at the beginning of that change, that we're poised to enter a new economic era, and the early winners are already making their presence felt in the world. So I say to you, welcome to the third market era. What do I mean by the third market era? Let us consider history. The first market came about as humanity moved beyond subsistence living, and humans were able to specialize in areas beyond the acquisition of their own basic needs. As tribes began to interact with one another, trade became a necessary and important alternative to war. This first market was defined by unequal access to resources. As one tribe became particularly successful at hunting, and another tribe living by the sea found how easy it was to pull seashells from the ocean, a trade was arranged. Meat from the inland tribe in exchange for shells from the seaside tribe. Diversity of nutrition for ornamentation and status. This unequal access to resources, where one tribe had an abundance of meat and the other had an abundance for seashells, allowed them to both create mutual value. And this exchange for mutual value has defined markets throughout human history. But as we move from tribes to towns, and towns to cities, and cities to nations, we know what the history books teach us. That empires and colonies were formed to pursue the dominion over increasingly scarce resources. That our history was defined by this battle and conflict for control over resources. And our markets, as these resources became more and more scarce, had to respond. And that created the second market era. Out of the scarcity of access to resources came the importance of information. Those same tribes that once took seashells from the seashore realized that they could be polished to make jewelry. Those same hunters that once traded meat came to realize that the hides could be turned into leather. People learned to extract ore from the ground, and once they learned how to smelt the ore, they discovered how to make alloys. If you think about the most powerful countries, the most powerful agencies in the world in that era, they were defined by unequal access to information. The Dutch East India Company knew that on one side of the ocean, people were willing to part with tobacco for almost nothing. And on the other side of the ocean, people were perfectly willing to trade that tobacco for whiskey. Be brought right back across the ocean, right? That's unequal access to information. And so these two markets work together, the market of unequal access to resources and the market of unequal access to information. But all of that changed because of the internet. The internet created a democratization of information unlike anything ever seen before. Today, each and every one of you in your pocket, each and every one of our children at home has access to more information at the tip of their fingers than the King of England had at the advent of World War I when he was the most powerful person in the world. This means that information scarcity no longer can be the sole provenance and capability of market differentiators. We need, much like the information market built upon the scarcity of resources, we need to build a third market upon the abundance of information. And that market, the third market, is the market of insights. This means that the ability not only to acquire massive amounts of information, but to analyze that information, to see markets in new ways, this is what will define the next generation of market winners. Those that are willing to constantly ask new questions and are best placed to respond to those insights will win in the third market era. So let's Sorry, I forgot to build the slide. So let's talk through some examples. A decade ago, the Apple Corporation was one that was long known for taking risks and innovating. But at the time, they found themselves languishing behind their competitors in the marketplace. Microsoft dominated the PC world. Palm and RIM were set to dominate the handheld device businesses. Adobe and other companies were encroaching on Apple's traditional strongholds in the education and creative spaces. But at Apple, they were busy learning the lessons of the information age. Open source was transforming how people created and shared software. Rapid advances in miniaturization, control systems, silicon technologies, and software design, coupled with the saturation of the marketplace, was stagnating the margin and value in the PC markets. Apple had a long-held reputation of creating closed ecosystems and knew that the value of consistency of design that enabled them to bring to their solutions. But they did something revolutionary. They took that very thing that most defined them, the notion of a closely controlled and tightly managed system, and they turned it on its ear. And they said, everyone in the world is welcome to develop software and sell it through our app store. They would continue to tightly control the operating system, the architecture, but they would let everyone participate in the creation of software. And not only that, they massively reduced the barriers to entry. Before the advent of the concept of App Store, a software manufacturer might take weeks, months, and years, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to create a software capability, a method for patching, for deploying, for maintaining. Now, presuming you could get through Apple's qualification process, you simply had to click a button to publish your software to millions of customers. This enabled the creation of insights in the software industry that used to take years, that now could happen overnight. If you were a software manufacturer in the previous era and you wanted to know who used your product, you had to comb through pages and pages and pages of contract documentation. You had to hire lawyers and partners to go out and do audits. You had to get your customers to agree to share their data. Now, in this modern world, if you want to know who uses your software and you participate in the Apple Store, you click a button and it tells you. Am I trending up? Am I trending down? What features do my customers most like? What's my sell-through to advertisers? This information, these insights, allow you to constantly tune and adapt your software. No place is this better seen in the Apple universe than in the gaming industry. And if you're a player of handheld games on your iPhone, you'll see just how good these companies had got at figuring out when to add new features, how to make you wait just long enough to build a thing that you're willing to pay a couple coins to accelerate. All these things are happening because they're able to constantly tune and create insights from the data that comes from participation in this platform. They are in fact creating a virtual laboratory to study human behaviors that fits in the palm of your hand. Uber. Uber is another great example of a company that is winning in the insight market. Their success story started with an exercise in orthogonal thinking. They've challenged our basic assumptions about what people value in the transportation service. They started with an audacious notion that you would be willing to ride with a total stranger just because you could talk to them through an app on your phone. They took an industry that had been defined by certification, regulation, licensing, government oversight, and replaced it with 5 stars on the bottom of a screen. They created a trust relationship between strangers that was more powerful than existed between a citizen, their government, and these corporate institutions. But it didn't stop there. Uber has created a system of advanced analytics that have changed our ability to understand urban traffic patterns. They've integrated surge pricing so that they act and operate like their own data market. They've even created something that is so seamless that the first time you use it, it feels like magic. The first time I used Uber, and I got out of the car, I thought, wait, I don't have to pay? I just get to walk away? I mean, that's a different experience. But the fact is, the data that comes from that, the information that comes from those exchanges creates whole new insights. Uber is currently exploring how to apply their technology to food delivery. Imagine as a restaurateur, instead of paying a full-time delivery person, every time you needed to deliver food, you clicked a button on your phone and someone came and got that food and delivered it for you. What might that mean for your ability to respond to surges? If during the most busy time of the day you could guarantee you could serve all of your customers without having to carry the costs of paying all of those delivery people during idle time. They're thinking about how to engage with the self-driving car revolution. They're thinking about how to inform governments on how to better improve traffic patterns through real-time data analysis. Driving and the experience of being driven in the inner city is something we certainly all understand. So it wasn't new information, this notion that there was a big market opportunity there. It took a new insight into the true value of the market and sustained insights into what truly matters to the customer and the value chain for Uber to upend a $50 billion industry. So the fact of the matter is, this phenomena is only speeding up. We believe at GE that by 2020, 1 billion homes around the world will have smart meters. That means instead of sampling your usage data once a month, having auditors check meters once a quarter, that we'll have real-time, always-on access to the utilization of energy. Imagine the power that gives to a power grid provider to be able to understand not just what the overall load demand is, but how it changes house to house, appliance to appliance. That we as consumers can participate in this democratized process by installing something as simple as a Nest smart device in our home that can interact with that and allow us to take control over our own consumption. There is perhaps nothing more synonymous with a General Electric corporation than the light bulb. Yet we think that the nature of the light industry is going to change, that there will be over 10 billion internet-connected light bulbs in the next 3 years. What will that mean to the industry when you have 10 billion computers and light outlets around the world? What kind of grid, what kind of communication system can you create in that world? Over 150 million cars will be internet-connected by 2020. Think about that, 150 million computers roaming the world. What might we create when we can enable these things with artificial intelligence and machine learning? We think by 2020, some of our machines will generate 10 petabytes of information a day. 10 petabytes. As we become more and more connected, we are generating more and more information. And it doesn't take a lot of imagination to think about a world where these petabytes of information come together to teach us things that we could never see before. Imagine a world, for example, where digital assistants help power plant operators to decide when to schedule maintenance or how best to maximize profit on high-demand days. Imagine trains that knew when to brake and when to accelerate to maintain fuel efficiency, to maximize that fuel efficiency. Imagine wind turbines that talk to one another, tilting and yawing in order to optimize the overall effectiveness of the field in generating electrical power. You don't have to imagine these things. They all exist today as part of the digital industrial revolution. So how are we evolving at GE? How are we preparing for this future? First, we've recognized that risk is everywhere. And the only rational response to risk is to be proactive in how we engage with change. The stories of Apple and Uber have taught us that it's not enough to just be the best in your market. You have to be willing to totally upend how you do business and create new business models. As I said, there's nothing more synonymous with a General Electric corporation than the light bulb. But the market changes when you go from selling an incandescent bulb that fails after months or years, and instead you're selling an LED that lasts a lifetime. You're no longer talking about a high volume, low margin business. So what do? Well, at GE, we've launched Current, powered by GE, to sell lighting systems. Imagine going to a supermarket where the lights over the meat are redder, the lights over the produce are more green, that they actually enhance the beauty, the aesthetic appeal of what you're looking at, that the aisles, instead of being lit by harsh fluorescent and incandescent bulbs, have cool, soothing light that makes you feel welcome and comfortable while you shop. How much longer would you spend in this store? How much more money would you subconsciously spend if you felt comfortable, if things looked more appetizing and appealing? What would it mean if our street lights, instead of just providing light when it was nighttime, also provided free Wi-Fi? If they had sensors enabled to detect pollution, to be able to analyze traffic patterns, if they were voice enabled, so that if you were in a time of distress, you could simply call for help, or if you needed instructions to the nearest movie theater, you could just talk to a lamppost. These are things that happen when you think about how to change your business model. In order to respond to these kinds of change, we must be fast and we must be nimble. Our capabilities must not be hindered by IT systems that require months to acquire and configure and that demand constant care and feeding. We must free ourselves from our basic technical talent so that they can move out of the data centers and into a place where they can better understand our markets, create insight engines, and create applications that will shape the future. At GE, we are investing in Predix, a first-of-its-kind industrial internet operating system which will marry classic operating technology systems capabilities with information technology talent and skills to transform how industrials do business. But we're here to talk about cloud, so let's talk about cloud. It's been a long journey for GE. For 5 years, we've been considering how best to integrate cloud into what we do. Like many of you, our initial foray into cloud was one that was experimental and focused on cost and productivity. When I joined the Amazon Customer Advisory Board in 2011, I had some pretty modest goals. I was looking for ways to reduce the cycle time for implementing new infrastructures. I wanted to figure out if there were easier ways to deploy technology in new emerging markets. Many of our customers at the time were saying, "We love your solutions here in rural Brazil or sub-Saharan Africa, but we can't wait 6 months for you to build a data center, and we can't invest millions of dollars just to help you get through the door." So would the cloud be something that allowed us to get into these new markets and experiment quicker? These were questions we were asking ourselves. So for a period of almost 3 years, we experimented. We partnered with the US government to explore ways to do crowdsourced vehicle design on the cloud. We partnered with academic institutions and hospitals to see if we could accelerate the qualification of contrast agents to better help detect and respond to the threat of cancer. These were very real-world experiments, but they were not in the core of our business. But by 2014, we were convinced. We were convinced that cloud was not only a dramatic change in technology, but that it would enable and help us to transform our culture. And ultimately, it is culture that engages us with the world. Much as open source changed the world by enabling the sharing of code, cloud would change the world and enable us to share data and business processes. By 2014, we were convinced, and we've committed to moving 9,000 applications to the cloud in concert with our cloud partners. In the ensuing 2 years since then, we've learned when it's okay to lift and shift, but also that there's tremendous value in refactoring for the cloud. There's perhaps no better example than our quoting tool from oil and gas that Jim Fowler, our CIO, spoke at Amazon reInvent about. This is a tool that was hated by our sales force. It was clunky, it was hard to use, updates could take weeks or months. By the time we were done shifting it to the cloud, refactoring it for the cloud, cycle time to change went from 2 months to 2 days. Cost to operate was reduced by tenfold. And our salespeople were clamoring to use the tool because it now was not only easy to use, but they could work directly with their customers and experiment, evaluate, and think about the future at a speed and pace they never could before. It allowed them to partner with their customer to co-design the future, simply because we had rethought how this thing could work when the scale of infrastructure was no longer an encumbering force. GE Oil and Gas, our division that is best known for its cloud migration, has a fantastic success story. The first thing we realized as we started to participate in the cloud is that you can't take all of your same old techniques and just apply them to cloud as if it was just a data center that somebody else owned. You really had to think about the importance of critical services and automation. Getting deployment right is the first test of a truly cloud-based company. So we invested in automation technologies. We launched the formation of what we call the GE Bot Army. The Bot Army is always looking at what we're running in the cloud. It's shutting services down when we're not using them. It's helping us to scale up as demand peaks. It's looking for systems that aren't secure and either fixing them or putting them in quarantine. It replaces the work of hundreds of systems administrators because with an Amazon-like cloud service, you can do all of this with Lambda triggers. It's an incredibly powerful thing. And as you can see, in one short year, the oil and gas business moved over 300 applications to the cloud, averaging almost over $500,000 in savings every single month. As we mature our capabilities, we also began to reap unexpected dividends. By moving our data to the cloud, we began to be able to access capabilities that simply did not exist in our legacy infrastructure. Historically, if a data scientist wanted to run a big data experiment, they might spend months convincing senior management to make a capital investment and wait further months waiting for IT to acquire the skills, resources, and capabilities to build, secure, and maintain such an infrastructure. Now, our data scientists, with a click of a button and at the cost of tens or hundreds of dollars, can try any experiment they like. That is incredibly powerful when you can free up your best talent to move at the speed of their own mind. There is a critical mass that happens as systems become more interconnected. This is a lesson that we all learned at the advent of the internet. As we move our digital assets closer together and reduce barriers to access, to experimentation, and to insights, we create whole new powers and capabilities for our customers, for our partners, and for our people. Move to the cloud to save money. Stay to save the future of your companies. We know that speed to insight and not access to information will define the winners in this third market era. Now some hard numbers. All 8 GE business units are actively using Amazon Public Cloud. We consume over 45 different services across GE, and at the Global Research Center, we're experimenting with dozens more. At the beginning of the year, we'd already moved almost 800 applications. It's far more than that now. We have a lot of virtual private clouds, 83 of them. It becomes an incredibly powerful way to control access, to arbitrate security, and to create a sense of trust amongst partners. We've already closed 4 of our major data centers, 26 more to go in the next 3 years. We decommission more applications than we move. Because what happens when you start to look at the cloud is you realize things that you used to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing are now a feature in a cloud platform. You can literally just shut them off and replace them with a feature that exists as part of the platform. It's incredibly powerful. And we're just beginning. We're just beginning to think about how cloud and insights and these capabilities will transform the future of our company, to transform the future for our customers and our employees. So what did we learn? First, we learned the importance of automation. It creates incredible power when you no longer have to count on highly talented systems administrators to deploy systems, when in fact a salesperson can stand up a new instance of a capability simply with a click of the button. We realized that this significant change, well, the path was fraught with obstacles, with cultural challenges, with the need to rethink our most commonly held practice, that once that change started at the top, once people were given permission to think in this new way, we couldn't keep up with our employees. They loved these capabilities. They thought it was an incredibly powerful thing to be able to experiment in these new ways. It took great courage to move away from these tried and true practices like waterfall software development, security and governance review boards, things that had become, GE is known as a great management company. Well, many of those practices that made us a great management company could have made us a bad cloud company. So it was important for us to rethink those things as our world changed around us. Because by freeing ourselves from these time-consuming tasks, by empowering our employees to be responsible for these decisions, it allowed us to allow them to focus on work and not work process. That accelerates our ability to bring products to market. It allows us to rethink our security posture. If you think about it, the information security practices that most of your companies have to live with are a result of a 30-year-long Cold War. Most of us using operating systems that find their basis in the 80s. So it's no surprise that as people learned to write viruses, we slapped an antivirus solution on top. As people started to steal laptops, we layered encryption technology on top. As people started to attack more and more often, we needed regular monthly patching. But none of these things were endemic to that original operating system. They were all bolted on capabilities. Well, the cloud is a new thing, and security exists if you do it right in every single layer. So now, instead of having to bring together a hodgepodge of capabilities, you've got a single unified platform that makes security an API addressable phenomenon. This year at GE, we've started a new program called the Industrial Dojo. It's a safe space that brings experts from our platform teams, our software solutions groups, and our security teams together to rapidly co-design solutions. In the past, we might have spent weeks or months navigating the political, internal business processes so that people could seek permission to even determine the viability of their ideas. Now we allow teams to come together for 2-week sprints in this safe place to rapidly experiment and to conduct not just an idea, but a practice. In 2 weeks, they can go from an idea to a workable, minimum viable product. That means in 2 weeks' time, they can go to their market and say, is this something you want? Instead of saying to their boss, sir, do you think this is something the customers might want? Do you think it's something we can afford to do? We've removed and reduced all of those barriers. This change in attitude and velocity has become a game changer as we scale the culture change across the company. Because after all, in the digital era, if you're not disrupting your own markets, someone else will disrupt them for you. So as I come to close, I'd like to introduce you to GE's latest digital innovation. Meet the digital twin. Imagine a world in which every single physical asset has a digital analog comprised of physical and mathematical models that can predict performance. This is the reality that we're creating at GE today. Until very recently, the only way to gain access to detailed information about the performance of an aircraft engine was to stand next to it and physically inspect it. This is a GE9X. It's one of the most powerful aircraft engines in the world. Little known fact for you to think about before you fly home. The operating temperature of that aircraft engine is so high that it will melt the metal that the engine is made of. That's right, it will actually melt the very thing it is made of. So why don't planes melt their engines when they fly? Because of novel advances in coatings and films. We coat the metals with ceramics and other materials that have higher operating tolerances, which allows us to see these fuel efficiencies and thrusts that are capable in a modern aircraft engine. But those coatings are damaged by environmental conditions. They may be eroded by exposure to pollutants. They may be ablated by salinity when flying over the ocean. And so very, very smart people, don't worry about the safety of your engines, by the way. We never have had one of these things fail this way. We have great actuarial tables and processes for how we keep these things well run. But the fact of the matter is, these are fleet-level analytics today. We know over the 30 years that we've built aircraft engines that on average we start to see wear happening on, say, a 2-year interval. So we inspect every 18 months, and then that way we always know well in advance. But the fact of the matter is, not every aircraft engine is created equal. This aircraft engine, for example, only flies in North America. It's only been on wing for 2.5 years. The last time it was inspected, its distress rating was less than 2 on a 5-point scale. Most of the time, it actually just flies back and forth between Seattle and Portland, short-haul flights. It's never had an alert for temperature deltas, which is a sure indicator that you're beginning to see ablation in the inside of the engine. It's due for overhaul today in 7.1 months. How do we know that? Well, we've got a digital twin called the cumulative damage model that pulls information from the real operating performance of this specific aircraft engine and knows not only does it fly 80% of its flights over the Pacific Northwest, it knows exactly the days. It pulls in information from GIS and weather companies to know on the particular day that it was flying, it had just rained and so there were fewer pollutants in the air. They knew that actually the other 20% of the time, though, this thing is flying back and forth between Seattle and Anchorage, which means that it flies over the ocean. And there's no better corrosive in the world than salt water. So it knows that we've got to take that into account. It knows that it's nearly a brand new engine, so it has the next generation coatings inside of it. It knows that therefore all the parts inside the engine are the same age. You know, when an aircraft engine is 20 years old, this blade might have been replaced 10 years ago, and this one 9, and this one 8. Right? So all of those things come together, and now we know for this very specific engine when to service it. Take that concept and apply it to power plants. That means that we'll know when to maximize performance in order to maximize profitability of an individual plant. Imagine for wind farms that the turbines can talk to one another, that the turbine in the first row can change how it tilts and yaws so that it maximizes the wind flow to the turbine behind it, and so on, that the whole farm partners together to maximize its flow. That we can model the performance of trains on the tracks so that we know that for each individual asset, how to maximize not just its performance, but its ability to deliver its products on time. This is the digital industrial future. It is powered by analytics, it is a system of insights, and it is about the individual crafting of performance and capabilities in the future. So I'll leave you with 3 things. First, risk and uncertainty are everywhere. Second, the ability to move to platforms and create insight engines will be a differentiator. And third, lean into change, because if you don't disrupt your own markets, someone else will do it for you. Thank you very much.
以上をもちましてエンタープライズデイキーノートを終了いたします。